Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this postmortem of my Blitz game number 861. I had the white pieces and started off with e4. My opponent went e6, the French defense. So I go d4, he goes d5. And I go knight c3. That's the most popular choice here and the way I usually play. I mean, there are other ways to play. Knight d2, the Tarrasch is very popular. Or the advanced variation, not quite so popular, but certainly playable. Anyway, knight c3. And two main choices here are knight f6 and bishop b4. White can also take. That's the Rubinstein variation, but bishop b4, the win hour, is popular, the way I like to play with the French, and knight f6, the classical variation. So you can either push on right away or play bishop g5 first. So I go with bishop g5. The point of this is that if black plays bishop e7, you can see that's not the only move here, but it's quite popular in my experience. It's the second choice in this database behind taking, which is a very complicated line, or bishop b4. All those are they're very tactical lines. So bishop e7 is a simple way to play, and the chess engine likes it for black. So it seems to be simple and good. So I see it a lot in practice. So I push on, and the knight moves away. And then I take the bishop. That's kind of the main idea I have when playing this. There is an option here to play h4. That's known as the Alechen-Chittard attack. And it's kind of an interesting way to play. It's actually, black can get into trouble if he tries to grab the pawn. It's a gambit. He can take the pawn here, but white gets activity. I might try to play that way sometime. I haven't done that. I always just play the natural capture here, with the idea that you're leaving black with the only one bishop, and it's the bad one. So hopefully that will come to your advantage at some point. Your problem with white here is that your center is a little bit fragile. So f4 to short up immediately makes a lot of sense. And then c5 right here is just a mistake. And it's something I should have remembered. I didn't notice it until the next move. But whenever you see c5 and you're playing this kind of setup against the French, always look for knight b5, because now this knight is coming into that good square on d6 with check, and that's pretty disruptive to black's development. And he can't take time to castle, because knight to c7 will win the rook in the corner. So it's coming in with two threats. So that's why it's a strong move right here. So my opponent blundered by playing c5. The two main moves here are a6, which of course would prevent knight to b5, or just castling. Castling is fine, because if you play knight b5 here, well, let's go on a move or two. Say knight f3, c5 is the main move, and knight b5 here just doesn't lead to a whole lot. And we saw why in the game. It's not costing black his castling privileges like it would if I had played it right away after f4. This is back to the game. He went c5. Yeah, so knight b5 right here costs black his castling privileges. And instead I played knight f3. So a couple of mistakes. We swapped mistakes, and now we're back to about even. And now knight b5. It's not a horrible move here, but it doesn't accomplish a whole lot. And we're in, or we're just out of the opening book. This is not the way people usually play. He just castles here, and I can drop my knight into this good square. The chess engine actually thinks this is the start of my going downhill, and actually that knight on d6 turned out to be a problem later in the game. The chess engine would just play c3 here, and maybe wait to be kicked before deciding where to put the knight. And I could maybe even come back like this if it gets kicked and it doesn't like jumping forward. Anyway, I plunged in with knight d6. It looked good. It looks like it might be restricting black's movement, but it turns out to be good for black, this whole line. So he went ahead and took, and I took back right away. It's something to remember, a second point for you to remember if you're ever playing white against the French. The first point is look for that knight b5 move immediately after c5. The second point is this one. You don't always want to take back that pawn right away. It can sit there for a while, and the bishop can come out to b5, or bishop to d3. You shouldn't necessarily be in a hurry to round that pawn up. And in fact, taking here seems to be a mistake, and the chess engine is already giving black a winning advantage. So it shows how those little missteps in the opening can pile up quickly. So things to keep in mind. So he played f6. That's a good move. And there seems to be no way out of these difficulties here except to take on c6. This was actually the engine's top choice, so I guess I made the right decision there. And then queen e2. The chess engine preferred queen d4 as a way to shore up the center. Maybe it's a little more active here, and it's also maybe looking at this diagonal. It would continue somewhat similarly, but my queen is just guarding some more squares over here on the king side, and that seems to be better for me, although black still has the advantage there. But I went queen e2. Let's see, he took, I took, and then he played a5, not the most accurate move. Here's the first chance that black had to play this move, queen g5, which I never did anything about this queen g5 move. He could have played it here. It's actually one of the stronger times to play it. It's preventing me from castling, and you know, I have open lines on both sides of my king. This is a position which is just really, really good for black. You know, I have to save my knight here, so probably will take here, and then he can and then play g3. That was the recommended move to try and unwind with my bishop, and he can grab the pawn, but still I'm no closer to castling, and all of black's pieces are either in the game or ready to spring into the game, and he's got an extra pawn on top of all that, so that's just a pretty straightforward win for black. So that's what he should play here. He went a5 with a different idea, and I actually did not respond to his idea, but I was so worried about this setup here and getting castled, I just castled right away, got my king out of the center here, because I thought he was going to play something like this and just go after my king and queen on that line. That's a lot. I was forgetting about the fact that, where were we? Queen e2, f takes, a5. Yeah, and then I castled. I was forgetting about the fact that this square is covered, and as rook comes forward here, I could just take it with the knight. So so that was not an immediate threat. So I was in too much of a hurry to castle there, and I neglected to deal with this move, which is not winning material, but it's a little unfortunate that you know, he's trading off things while he's ahead. I really don't welcome these trades here. Although once again, queen g5 is a move that's even better than bishop a6. But this was his plan. He played a5, bishop a6. And then I actually have a decent response here on queen e3, and it's not entirely clear. Black still has the advantage, but it's not as big an advantage as it was before, and not necessarily winning. It's a game I can play on for quite a while here, maybe hopes of turning it around. So queen e3, once again, it covers this g5 square, so it prevents queen g5. Let's see, he can trade the bishop and then bring his queen out over here to h4, but I can play a move like h3 and just kind of hold on to things. And the material here is even, and maybe you know, maybe I can find some way to make use of this knight at some point. I was also a little worried about this knight getting trapped over here, but at the moment it has one square it can go to. It could go to b7, but from b7 it could come back to c5. So it could get into the game via that route. The other squares are all covered. So, but there is one route for the knight to get into the game. So anyway, this is a position that actually could be playable for white if I had found queen e3. The move I played, c4, was actually not a bad move. It was like the second choice of the chess engine, but queen e3 was better. I was just neglecting this queen g5 threat, and now he plays it. That's correct. The correct move here. That's the best move in the position. Gets his queen to a good square, and he's going to win this pawn. I took it with the queen, and I don't really have anything better than trading out. So we're into endgame position where black is a pawn up. I do get to save my knight, and the pawn up is not necessarily a winning advantage here, and particularly after the way he plays it. He keeps trading, and then he takes back. Let's see, and I played rook to e1, hitting his knight. So yeah, I wasn't feeling so bad about this position. If we count, it's 4 pawns versus 5, but I might even be getting a pawn back here because his knight is a bit awkwardly placed as well, and my knight can get out. Let's see, the most accurate defense here, or play for black, is to play rook to a6, defending the pawn this way. I mean, defending the knight this way. The idea is that if I take his knight, he takes my knight, and he's also defending the e-pawn. So the way it went, he attacked my knight from this direction, and I just have to move the knight away. I could even have come to the b5 square. The chess engine recommends both of those moves. This one hits the rook, so I thought it was more forcing, but it turns out this other move is just as good because I don't know, if I went in the other direction, he might have had time to save that knight somehow. Anyway, I guess from here, yeah, that's the point. From here, the knight could spin around to this square and double attack this pawn. So it would get increasingly difficult for him to defend that pawn, and I would probably manage to round it up. But this also works. He plays rook b8. I take the knight, he takes the knight, and I take here. And for a second, I've managed to equalize the material, but black is still better because his after this rook f2 move, which is the best move here, he is getting another pawn, and his pieces are just a little more active, which is really important in this rook and pawn endgame. So it's a double threat. He's threatening to take here with a pretty nasty check and take here. So I play b3 to shield my king. That's the right move. He plays a4, and then there's an endgame where black is better, but I could still play on a pawn down. I'm going to lose a pawn over here with the move like this, rook e3, just defending along here, letting him take this pawn and playing h3. And it's a pawn down endgame, but this pawn is still loose, and so it's not entirely clear if he can convert this. So my next move actually makes black's job easier. I grab the pawn, but that leaves him with these rooks on active posts. So he takes here and takes here. Still material equality, but his 2 rooks are really dominating the scene here because he's got all these checks and threats against my king. So it's all just a winning for black. It's ever since this point here where I played rook takes d5 instead of rook back to e3. So, they say you should play actively with your rooks in the endgame, but sometimes you just need to play a defensive move, and this is one of those cases. So it's actually this rook takes d5 move that gives the game away. Let's see, he takes, I take. Not that I'm better after that. It's still a fight, but I still have chances after this. It is just lost. So king to c1. The idea with king c1 is that I want to have room. I want to be able to bring this rook down and block from checks on this side. So let's see. He played this interesting kind of tempo move, rook a3, threatening to mate me and actually pulling my king back to b1. So that's a nice little move there. And then he grabs on g2 here. So I put my rook on the 7th rank. I'm trying to get counterplay here. And he plays h6, so his king doesn't get mated. Yeah, it was also a mate threat. Then I played with h4, but this doesn't work at all. He plays rook h3 with a double threat, taking the pawn and checkmating me, and I no longer have a defense. My king is no longer on that c1 square. So actually the move to play here is king c1, and then he can grab the pawn. He's 2 pawns up and will probably go on to win, but that's best move there anyway. Instead I push the h-pawn, and so it's just a forced mate here. And I let him checkmate me. So that's how the game ended. So I thought there were some interesting lessons there about how to play the endgame and also how to play the opening against the French. So I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I will see you later. Bye.